I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your host, Jamie Jackson.
Hey lurkers, welcome to this episode of the Stab and Gab Sunday. Today we have a special guest with us. What's your name?
My name is my name is Liz Turnbull.
And some of you who have visited us at the Sasquatch Festival in Whitehall, New York, Liz has the So Sci-Fi and Beyond booth. She's been with me there. She was at the Sasquatch Saturday in Sykesville, Maryland. I think those are the two things that we've done together.
That's it.
She's always next to me because, when you're traveling to New York, you need to have a helper. So Liz is going to help us with this. You took a class, didn't you?
I did. So I'm enrolled at Carroll Community College, and I've been taking some criminal justice classes for fun. So last semester I took serial killers.
Okay, it was a
Yep.
serial killer class.
Yep.
I couldn't remember if that was the title or not, but
Yeah, now it's called serial killers.
I want to go back to school.
It's awesome. I've taken criminal law and criminal justice, and those were for funsies. So I love them.
So our topic today is the eyeball killer of Dallas, Texas, and was that like your class project?
Yep,
Or?
that's who I picked for my presentation. I wanted to pick somebody that wasn't really well known because I figured everybody would pick like Ted Bundy, and they did. They picked
Of course they did.
and H.H. Holmes and like stuff like that. So I wanted to do something different. And even my professor really didn't know anything about him, so it was good.
That's good. That's good. It's always good. Okay, so we are going to get into this, and I have my outline, and I haven't been doing co-hosts in a long time, so it we'll get into the flow. I said this is basically the two of us talking about what we talk about all the time:
Yes.
serial killers, murder, true crime, but with a microphone in between the two of us.
Yeah, and then it goes out into the world, and then yeah.
Yes, but you don't have to worry about that because I will edit everything and save all the good stuff for the blooper reel. So Liv will be jumping in here. She has a lot more details about some of the things because, of course, I'm not doing this for a personal grade. I'm just doing this for funsies in the podcast. So she does have more information than I have. So she'll jump in with stuff that I don't have. To get started, this went on between 1990 and 1991 in Dallas, Texas, as I mentioned. The eyeball killer also went by the Dallas Ripper and the Dallas Slasher. And in the 1900s, Dallas was a successful, booming city. The officials there promoted the city as the gleaming city of the South. But it was also a very violent city. And in the early 90s, it was dealing with the largest rate of crime that it had ever seen, with over 500 homicides in 1991.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot. I didn't know that.
Well, you didn't have I always try to give background
Yeah,
of
no,
the location so you get an idea.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the area.
Yeah.
Just the
Yeah.
Star Motel, but we'll get there.
Yeah. So specifically, we're going to talk about the area of Oak Cliff, which was known as a high crime area that had gang issues, drug issues, and prostitution. Now, I know today's accepted terminology is sex worker and not prostitute. I am going to tell you that I'm going to use the word prostitute. So it's not because I'm being derogatory, it's because the source material at the time from 1990, 1991, the term was prostitute, and that is how I wrote my notes. So
And I use sex worker because I had to for school.
because she had to be
So I'm gonna say sex
correct.
worker.
Yes, I will do my best, but typing notes, when I'm writing notes, I'm writing notes based on that. So I just want to get that out of the way. Anyway, back to Oak Cliff in Dallas. It was an area that you did not want to hang around in. It was not a place you wanted to be. Sex workers were known to be on the stroll during the day as well as the night, and most of them were supporting a drug habit. In Oak Cliff, there was a 33-year-old named Mary Pratt who worked as a sex worker for quite some time.
Yes. And she also worked at the Star Motel. So she worked there as a day job. And then night she would do sex work to, fund her habit.
Mary, hotel staff by day, sex worker by night.
Yes.
To use the I'm gonna really try hard.
It's okay.
I'm gonna try really hard.
I get it, trust me.
She grew up not far from the area, and her family still lived just outside the city. And I believe she actually still lived with her parents.
She did. So, like, she would have her regulars drop her off at her parents' house, and she would just, like, crawl back into her childhood bed and go to sleep. So, like, yeah, like, it was, her parents never knew about her other life. They never knew that she was a prostitute.
Really? I
Yeah.
lived with my parents off and on as an adult, and I cannot see myself. First of all, I've never been a sex worker. Just we'll clarify that first. But I could not. I don't think I would have the balls to have a John drop me off at my parents' house. I just don't think I could do that.
I don't know if they knew she was a drug addict because, like, when they found the body, we'll go into it, like, they found track marks on her arms and things. So I don't know if, like, her parents knew that she had a drug problem, but they didn't know that she was a sex worker. Like, this was a shock to them when her body was discovered.
Was she was a mother, right? Didn't she have a child?
Not that I was aware
Okay,
of.
I had a listing, just so everybody knows, this was when people are sex workers, it is really difficult to find details about their life because unfortunately, especially during this time frame, they were treated
So bad.
as less than human almost by most people. So newspaper articles, things like that, had very little information about who they were. And I think it's more important to highlight the victims. I mean, this is person who killed them is fascinating because of the psychology and the issues, but the people who were killed deserve to have somebody remember them. So if you say she wasn't a mother, I didn't find anything else out about that. So she wasn't a mother, but she was 33 years old, lived with her parents. Her close friends said that she loved her family and she really wanted to get out of her life on the street. Like, that's not what she wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
Anything else you have about her life before?
I just have the tidbit I told you earlier that I was reading an article and it said that she was a large woman. They said that Mary Pratt was a large woman, weighing in at 156 pounds. I'm 150 pounds. Like, I'm not a large woman.
Liz isn't. She's like 4 foot -3 or something.
Just couldn't get over that. But again, back in the time, I don't really think women were even thought super highly of. So, like,
Yeah.
156 pounds apparently back then was large.
I mean, it possibly could have appeared that way if she was short, but I don't even think we have a height on her.
No. I have a pic. I'm looking at her. She doesn't look like a large woman.
No, she wasn't.
She's very pretty. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I had to throw that in because I just thought that was insane.
The first murder on December 12th, 1990. Mary Pratt was working Jefferson Boulevard. The next morning, in a nearby neighborhood, she was found, partially nude, shot in the head, and her body was splayed out with her arms above her head and her legs spread. The body was in the street, seemingly placed there to be easily discovered. The man who discovered the body placed a sheet over her and called the police. He wanted to give her some dignity because she was nude and splayed out for the world to see her. Her murder was not initially viewed as out of the ordinary. It was not unusual for sex workers to be victims of violence, and the city was dealing with quite a few murders at the time. 500 is a lot for 1 year. I mean, that's insane.
That is insane. 500.
Even Baltimore doesn't
I was
have
just gonna say, like, what is Baltimore up to?
Yeah, Liz and I were like Baltimore. That's our frame of reference.
So many.
I know. However, during her autopsy, it was quickly revealed that her murder might be something slightly more sinister than the typical prostitute murder. As the medical examiner was opening her eyes to note the eye color, it was discovered that her eyes had been removed.
And not only were they removed, but there was no tissue there either. Like, it was precision that they were removed.
Yeah,
It was very disturbing.
I had that there were no scars, no bleeding. I mean, obviously she's not bleeding because she's already dead, but there was no sign of bleeding, and that it was surgically precise.
Yeah, it was so good. The upper and lower eyelids were not disturbed. So it looked like she was just
Her eyes were
like,
closed.
yeah, she was
Yes.
just sleeping. Like,
Yeah, which is pretty significant because normally that would be something you might notice.
yeah,
I would think if
I would assume it's like your
well,
eyes
your
give it.
eyelids sink in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I've never seen a dead body, so I don't really know.
I unfortunately saw the autopsy photos for
Oh,
some
I
of these
did-
poor women.
I did not.
Oh, it was awful. I was not gonna put them in my presentation. I wanted to give them some dignity. But I did find like, the actual
Drawings or
Yep.
whatever. Yeah.
I,
So the FBI confirmed that a killer removing eyeballs was unprecedented. Nobody else had been doing this. And the killer became the first enucleator in the United States. So, just for everybody who wants a new vocabulary word, an enucleator is somebody who removes the eyeballs, if you didn't already figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, and so like the pathologist that was doing doing her autopsy, her name was Elizabeth Peacock. So she told the detectives that this procedure is not even taught in medical school. So whoever did this had a lot of practice removing eyes. So foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
So keep that in mind. Like, this wasn't something that was even taught in medical school.
Right.
Like, it's very odd. And that's why when you were talking about the FBI didn't even have any cases, the homicide detectives that were assigned to Mary Pratt's case, I don't know if you noticed, but like all the officers involved all worked together, which I thought was wonderful. Like, they actually wanted to solve these cases. So the one homicide detective, John Westphalia, he actually contacted the FBI and was like, "Hey, this is what's going on. Do you have anything?" I just thought for sex workers back in the day and not worrying about jurisdiction, I just thought that was wonderful that they
Yeah.
actually cared enough to like.
Yeah, jurisdiction actually does come into play a little bit.
Yes. Mhm.
So, and just so you know, this is a really hard thing to kind of put together in a chronological, cohesive thing. It's a little, there's so much. So,
And the one article, I will say, if you guys look at this up, there is an article called See No Evil from the Texas Monthly. Brace yourself. It is the most copy article, jumping from when he was a kid to victim back to when he's in college. This was very hard to timeline,
yes,
to be honest.
it was. So bear with us if we kind of jump around here. Liz has her entire project spread out on the desk, just so you know. So 2 beat cops that were assigned to the Oak Cliff region, Regina Smith and John Matthews, they talked to the women on the street. Regina and John, they had a pretty good rapport with the women because even though they had to arrest them at times, they also saw them and treated them as human beings. Like, they wanted to have a working relationship with these women. The people they talked to believed that the killer must be someone that she knew. Mary Pratt's fellow sex workers thought of all the bad Johns who had treated them poorly, but they couldn't think of any of them who fit the bill for what the police were looking for. There was also some confusion about the body dump site. She was working Jefferson Boulevard, but she was found in a residential area that was about a 10 to 15 minute car ride away. Mary was known to only turn her tricks within a very small area. Most sex workers prefer to stay close to their pimp or friends because things sometimes go sideways, and obviously you want to be close to somebody who's going to help you.
Yeah.
While interviewing people, Smith and Matthews came across a sex worker by the name of Veronica Rodriguez. They noticed her hair and clothing were a mess, and her head and throat had some gashes or cuts. I don't know how bad they were.
Yeah, I just have the officers noticed a large gash on her forehead and a thin knife mark across her neck.
Okay. So Regina Smith asked her what had happened, and Veronica told them that she had almost been killed. Veronica claimed that she had been with Mary Pratt the night of her murder, and even said that she had witnessed her being shot. Veronica said the John went for her, and she escaped the car. She ran barefoot and partially clothed across an open field, and because she was of small stature, she was able to fit into a drain pipe, and that's where she hid. She could hear the killer calling her name, trying to find her. She ended up making her way to a house nearby where someone she knew lived, and they actually saved her. But unfortunately, Veronica's drug-induced state and her history of lying to police when she was arrested in an attempt to stay out of trouble made the officers question the validity of her story, which is tragic.
It is. Because she had some good information.
She did. Because then, in February of 1991, 27-year-old Susan Peterson's body was discovered on the same street as Mary Pratt. Susan Peterson was born and raised in Pennsylvania and was the oldest of two girls and called bright and athletic. When she graduated high school, she joined the Navy. She ended up in Dallas and preferred to be a free bird rather than part of the regimented military. It was said she was extremely street smart and also possessed a high degree of intelligence. She had been shot 3 times in the head, chest, and stomach. There was no physical damage other than the gunshot wounds. Like Mary Pratt, she was killed elsewhere and her body brought to that area to be dumped. So Susan was also left partially nude, and her body was also splayed out in the same way that Mary Pratt's was. The one big difference between the two was that Mary Pratt's body was in the jurisdiction of Dallas City, and Susan Peterson was in the jurisdiction of Dallas County. So despite the similarities, they weren't linked immediately. So during Susan Peterson's autopsy, the medical examiner discovered that her eyes had also been removed with surgical precision, which prompted a call to detectives to let them know the 2 cases were linked because the same medical examiner did both bodies. So she was like, guys.
Elizabeth's like, yep, this is...
Yeah, like, I don't think there's now 2 enucleators, we're going to use the fancy word. Since there never had been one before, it's unlikely that there were now 2.
Yes.
So she let them know that, hey, you got a serial going on. All kinds of crazy theories began circulating about psychotic surgeons, or maybe a mortician, or basically anybody with any kind of medical degree or knowledge was, they could possibly be doing that. There were no leads, so the police resorted to some undercover work to try to find the person who was responsible. So they had a female detective go undercover, and while she was undercover, they had a gentleman come up who spoke to the undercover cop, and I believe he said something about, nice evening or whatever, and you have pretty eyes. So they arrested him. Turned out his name was Jim Ryan, and he was a surgeon. So, hey, we're like, woohoo,
yeah, we got
him. It's not.
What an odd thing to say to somebody, though, like, pretty eyes, like, especially with all this going on. I know. What an odd thing to say.
I know. He's the only person, well, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it. We don't want to jump ahead and,
start... guys, we're sorry.
Yes.
So much.
And just so you know, we had dinner prior to this, and we were already talking about it, so we already kind of have the same wavelength going on and had a discussion, so... Anyway, the police believed that the suspect, whoever it was, needed to have surgical skill and be strong enough to overpower the women. Susan Peterson was military trained and a fighter, so the person responsible needed to be strong enough to be able to overtake her, because that was one thing that was stressed by people who knew her.
Yeah, because she wasn't going to just trust anybody either.
No.
Like, she was one that they were like, okay, she had to have known who attacked her, because she was known as a fearless sex worker. She worked at that motel for 5 years. Like, she wasn't just some woman that was just like, I'm going to give this a go. Like, she was a professional. Yeah. She for lack of a better term. Yeah. She was a professional.
So at this point, the FBI produced a profile of the killer. They believed he lived within 5 miles of the area and most likely grew up in the area. They also said the suspect was most likely younger, about 30 years old, or maybe even younger than 30, and strong enough to overpower. Did you have anything else on that, or?
Well, I mean, the thing I could say about that is, when I was typing up this for school, I had to talk about hunting styles, and FBI has it. Like, Charles Albright, he would kill within 5 to 10 minute radius around his house, which we'll get there, was around the Star Motel. But, I mean, they were right on. Like, he felt comfortable being in that area.
Hmm.
Yeah, he felt comfortable.
Hmm.
So they were right.
Yep. Well, with some of the stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I won't get too carried
Okay,
away, but like,
yeah. So the two beat cops that I mentioned before, Regina Smith and John Matthews, continued to talk to other sex workers. One woman in particular, Brenda White, was a long-time sex worker in the area and mentioned an encounter that she had had recently. There was a John that picked her up in a station wagon and wanted to take her to some property he had down south. The man was strong and muscular and became enraged when Brenda refused to go and began screaming and cussing at her and yelled, "I hate hoes. I'll kill all of you hoes." He had salt and pepper hair and was older. He didn't just have, he was older and he had salt and pepper hair. Brenda had to mace him in order to be able to get out of his car.
yeah, she jumped out of it, I think, while it was moving, but she maced him.
Yeah, I
Because,
mean,
yeah, I mean, if you feel and also she was a 17-year old, she was a 17-year sex worker. Like, she was a veteran, if you
yeah.
would so call it. So she was comfortable with what she was comfortable with. She didn't want to go to some random area where she didn't know. So yeah, she maced him and jumped out of his vehicle.
It's just like Mary Pratt, who
Yeah.
everybody said she would not have willingly driven out to this
Nope.
neighborhood where they found her body, that she never did that. She wanted to stay close, and that's what a lot did because that's safety. Your
Exactly. No,
safety's where your people are.
yeah, and when we get into Albright, I have a lot of like connections with him with these sex workers. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
God, he's a mess. Awful person. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna say a mess like it's cute. Like,
He's
he
an
is a
awful.
yeah.
He's a serial killer, Liz.
Oh,
No,
oh my God, you
most of them are pretty bad.
yeah. Oh God. See, this is gonna be on the internet. What I'm talking about. Oh God.
Um, Officers Smith and Matthews took the tip to the detectives, but the detectives didn't believe it was anything because they placed a lot of weight on the FBI profile that said they were looking for a younger person around 30 or younger, and this guy was older. Then, unfortunately, in March of 1991, the body of Shirley Williams, a 41-year-old sex worker, was found in a residential area, shot and left nude. The killer seemed to have changed his MO a little bit. The first two victims were white, and Shirley Williams was black. Shirley was left in front of an elementary school completely nude, and her face had also been beaten, which was different. They checked at the scene because at this point they're expecting it, and yes, her eyes were also missing. This time, however, it appeared as though the killer was in a frenzy and in a state of rage when he killed Shirley. Shirley had marks around her eyes, and the killer left part of an X-Acto knife in her eye socket.
Yep.
She also had bruising on her face and a broken nose, indicating that he had at least punched her, but probably punched her more than once, I would
For
think.
sure. Yeah, it said she was badly mutilated. Her face was bruised up. I mean,
Yeah, she was beaten.
she was, in my opinion, probably the one that was most disrespected. All of them were, but like she was thrown away like trash. I mean,
yeah.
they all were, but like to leave her so, like, just
The others, you couldn't even tell their eyes were removed.
exactly.
You know,
This
it was
poor
done
woman was
so precisely. Nobody had any other marks on their body except for the gunshots
Yeah.
and the removal of the eyes.
Yep.
She's beaten, and the removal of the eyes is sloppier.
Yeah. Well, he left the blade in. Like,
Yeah, the blade
that's
broke
so
off.
slow. And his MO of being so
Yeah.
thorough and not leaving anything, like, he was pissed, like, when
Yes.
he did this. And you're gonna get into that because I
Yes,
didn't
I
know
am
this.
next. Yeah,
That
this is next.
I had no idea about this.
So the night when Shirley was killed, her friend Tina had been with her. They'd both been, I don't know what, walking the
Yeah, they were just
street. They were
yeah,
together. They were in tandem, working together, so to speak.
keeping a
And
lookout for each other.
yeah, exactly. It was raining that night, and Tina was getting ready to head back in, and she gave Shirley her yellow rain jacket to wear because Shirley was staying out a little bit later. There was a possibility that the killer might have targeted Tina rather than Shirley, but at night zeroed in on the yellow raincoat. And since he was already planning to kill, he continued through with it, even though Shirley was not the woman he intended to grab. So I think Tina was Hispanic, white or Hispanic.
I did not
Um,
find out what she like what race she was. I just
li-
found out about her.
Basically, Tina was lighter skinned. So,
Mhm.
everybody was like, he switched his MO and now he's taken a black woman. But I really, personally, I really put a lot into this because if it's dark out and it's raining and somebody's wearing a yellow raincoat and they're like, that's the one I want,
Yeah.
and then they don't notice that, like he's driving around and not sitting there watching them.
Yeah.
And then Tina's like, I'm done. I'm going inside. It's raining.
Yeah.
Here, wear
Take
my
my
coat. And now
Just trying to be a good friend.
he's driving around looking for the yellow coat
Mm.
and grabs a woman and finds out this isn't the woman that I wanted. So if you're a serial killer who has a type and you've already picked somebody out and you've got a person in the car and it's not who you wanted, are you going to be happy about that? I don't think so. I think you're going to be pissed and you're going to take it out on the person who you've got in the car. And I honestly believe that this is the reason why she was beaten
Oh
and
yeah.
why it was such a sloppy job because he was pissed.
Oh, and it makes sense. Like when I did my report, I did point out that she was just mutilated beyond belief compared to everybody else, and that explains it. I didn't even know why he would change his MO. So I honestly believe that this explains it because he was a very organized monster. Like
Yeah, he's
we'll get
been
into it.
very
Like
careful
yeah.
so far. So anyway, at this point, there still are no real leads in the case until Regina Smith, I should say officers Regina Smith
Yes.
and John Matthews. I don't mean to be disrespectful to their titles. They come across Veronica Rodriguez, who we mentioned earlier, with a John. And so, of course, she's doing something illegal. And they get Veronica out of the vehicle, and she begs them not to arrest the man that she's with, telling them, this is the
That's the guy
man that saved
life.
my life. He said, this is the one I was telling you about. So now they're starting to think, we have 3 murders with the same person. And maybe there is actually something to Veronica's story because she's like, hey, don't arrest this guy. He saved my life, which
Yeah.
is the story she told before. So Veronica said that she witnessed Mary Pratt, our first victim, being shot in the head, and that she ran off and hid in a drain pipe and then ran to the house of the man that she knew. Just to recap. So she told them that the man who had done this was an older man. The man that it was with in the truck, the John that saved her life, his name was Axton Schindler. Now, they deduced, would be a good word, I guess, that he could not have been the killer.
Yes.
He was not, I don't think he was a big person. He was very small stature, and other reasons. He was ruled out. He was not the killer.
They did take notice, though, on his driver's license where he lived and that it was 5 minutes from the Star Motel. So they did take notice of that. That was the only thing they really.
And it was close to the first 2 dump sites.
Yes.
So they were kind of like, So
Put that in our back pocket.
it's the things that make you go,
Yeah.
Wasn't that a song? You don't know because I'm old. So whatever. It was I'm Gen X, you're a millennial. Right? Are you a millennial?
I think so.
Or are you?
I was 93. I don't know where that puts
I don't
me.
know. I'll have to look it up. Anyways. I'm old enough to be your mother. Literally. Just so you
You're
know.
like my second mom growing up.
Yes, no. They have his license, they have his address. It's like, it's near the Star Motel, which is associated with things.
Hmm.
It's near the first two body dumps, which were dumped on the same street, but still,
Different
yeah, still,
jurisdictions.
it's close. So they run a property search on the address, and they learn that the house is owned by a man named Frederick Albright, and that that person also owns several other properties in the area. Unfortunately, Frederick Albright is dead and has been dead for many years.
Hmm.
While they're in the police department discussing the property, another officer recognized the address and mentioned, hey, there's a guy that lives there that has this fetish with X-Acto knives.
I had no idea about this.
And this officer, he's like, yeah, the guy's name is Charles Albright. He's the son of Frederick, and he inherited the properties from his dad. But the properties were still in the dad's name. That's not unusual. I can tell you right now. In my family, somebody is deceased.
Hmm.
It was inherited, and the deed has not been changed yet. The deed is still in the deceased person's name. So you have to go to an attorney and have that all changed. So don't think that that's
Yeah, it's not like he
weird.
was trying to.
I don't think he was trying to hide, anything. I just think he hadn't bothered to change it. Just to clarify that. So now we're going to get into is Charles Albright, because obviously Liz has already mentioned the name Albright. You know this is going to be the person if you're not familiar with the story. Charles Albright was born August 10th in 1933 in Amarillo, Texas, and he was adopted 3 weeks later as the only child of Fred and Dell Albright.
So, Adele was a school teacher who was extremely overprotective and strict. We'll go into it. And then Fred was a Dallas grocer. So, like, when I was looking into it, I'm not sure if it meant that he owned grocery stores or he managed them. So, something in the line of grocery stores, though.
I thought he owned a grocery store.
That
And
makes
some
sense.
some of what I was reading, I didn't go into a whole lot of detail with him
Yeah.
because he didn't seem to be the issue parent, so to speak.
Yeah, he definitely was
Um,
not.
but it seemed like he owned a grocery store.
So when I was reading through this and everything, it talked about how they weren't, you know, they weren't hurting for money. And we'll get into it. Like, I don't know if you saw, but like they bought property for Charles when he was like
Yes.
four. So I think they were hard up for money. So he very well could have owned
Yeah.
a
Yes.
grocery store, but
Yes, I think he did.
yeah.
So he was doted on by his mom, but on the other hand, she was also strict, really pushing the abusive envelope here. She kind of skirted, and back then she was probably skirting the edge of abuse.
For sure.
She would tie him to his bed when he wouldn't stay in it to take a nap. She also would punish him by putting him in a dark closet. And I did read a story.
He was one though. He was
I know
barely
he was
one.
little. He
It's
was
like,
little.
she locked him in there. I had for chewing on measuring tapes and spilling his milk. He's one. Like, let's lock him in a dark closet or tie him to the bed because he doesn't want to nap or drink milk.
There's a story that I didn't actually include it in my notes, but I remembered it because it was such a weird story. But she would let him outside. He would be playing in the backyard, and it was fenced, and he would get people to lift him over the fence, like people who were walking by, and he was little.
Yeah.
And he would coerce them into picking him up and lifting him over the fence. And then his mother would find him outside of the fence, so she started tying him to a tree like a dog,
Imagine.
to keep him from getting too close to the fence.
Let's not watch him or anything. Let's
Yeah,
just like
let's
keep
just
him
tie him
outside.
to a tree.
My God.
I mean, I don't know.
I have
I-
kids, so I really don't know what it's like, but I can't imagine wanting to tie him to a tree.
I mean, I totally understand the concept of leashes on children. I know that's a hot topic. People, you either are okay or you're not okay with it. I have never had to leash my children. I have a grandson who, and Liz knows because she's his godmother, 100% my one grandson would have been the kid in Harambe's gorilla cage in 30 seconds. Like you turn your head, you look back, he's in the freaking gorilla cage. I understand. I think as a parent, you keep them safe,
Oh, for sure.
in the ways that you can. This is not keeping him safe. This is not doing your job as a parent.
what did the
It's just
neighbors
being
think?
lazy. I don't know.
If I saw my neighbor tie their
I would be
kid to
calling the authorities, being like, you need to
time,
check. I read both that he had an aunt that did this and also that his mother did this, that dressing him up in girls' clothes and giving him a doll to play with. Now, some people may think that that's perfectly acceptable.
sure, but he didn't want
He
that.
didn't want that.
It was for
Okay.
their amusement.
They were being like, let's dress him like a doll. That this is not, that's not okay. It's,
No.
you know, it's not something that he's like, oh, I want to wear that pink tutu. You know, this is not what he wanted.
No.
Did you have anything else as far as
Oh,
abusive behavior? Because I think that's all I had touched on with my
I
research.
do. Okay. So, to jump back a little bit. So, she was, in her eyes, a very good mother. So, she didn't think cow's milk was the best milk for her son to be drinking. He needed to have goat's milk. So, she literally bought goats and put them in the backyard, and that is the milk that he would drink, is from their goats.
That's not abusive.
No, it's not. But I'm just saying, like, when you think about it, she's spanking him because he's spilling his
Yes.
milk, and she just was very. I don't know. I don't know how to.
She was kind of I don't want to say nuts, but
Oh,
it
she
was
wasn't
like
really touched,
it was like
overbearing.
extremes.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like it wasn't
She
just a
finally
happy
had a
medium.
kid, and she's like, I'm gonna,
You know,
not protect. Well, in her. Okay, so
she's protecting him in her eye. I mean,
yeah.
I will say, uh, goat's milk is easier to digest.
Oh, it's better. No, and I
If
agree.
I thought that I could get goats on my approved list to have goats, by my,
Do it.
that's how I would do.
But you
Hello,
wouldn't be beating your grandchildren because they spilled the goats. No,
um,
so in her eyes, she was protecting him. So he's a little boy. They get dirty. I mean, you have grandkids, like So she would make Charles change his clothes up to 2 to 3 times a day to keep him clean. She was so scared of him touching dog feces that he would take him to the local hospitals to show him the iron lung patients and say, if you touch dog poop, you will get polio and this will be you. Like, it's just, I can't imagine being, I don't honestly
he
know
was
how old
really
he was.
young. I
He
think
was like under 5.
it was like, yeah.
Like, come on. Like, that's terrifying. He doesn't know what polio is. Like,
So just so everybody knows, because not everybody, some people may not know what the iron lung is.
oh, true. Okay.
I'm just, I have to, I mean, I know what it is.
Oh, I do. Well,
Polio was gone by the time I was a kid.
Yeah.
And because of that, some people may not know.
Mhm.
It was this giant cylinder made of iron, metal,
Yep.
and people who had advanced stages of polio, they were inside. It was up to your neck, so your head stuck out, and the rest of your body was inside this metal cylinder. And I can't even tell you exactly what it did. Did it breathe for you?
I think it did to an
I
extent.
think that's why it's called the iron lung.
Yeah, but I don't think it
But
was like.
I think it had
just
to do with
helped.
pressurization
Helped,
and
yeah.
stuff, to help people who had polio live with polio. I don't know how that's living, but that's what that was. So incredibly traumatic. It would be traumatic as an adult to have to see people, especially kids, living like
For
that.
sure.
So for a smaller child to see that, that would be,
Horrific. I mean, I
yeah.
just can't imagine. I don't know what. And she's a school teacher.
Yeah.
So you would think that she would have a little bit more common sense not to like scare him so badly.
Yeah. Now, was she still working when he was?
It was up until a point, but not his whole childhood.
Yeah. I read.
She would help Fred at the grocery store,
Yeah.
but she wasn't a school teacher throughout his whole childhood. There was just like a duration that.
Yeah.
But no. So the other thing that she would do, and I don't know if I would classify this as child abuse or psychological abuse, but I'm gonna throw it in there because, as much as I hate to admit it, even though he was a monster, he was a very smart man.
Yeah.
She would force him to play piano before school. So 15 minutes every day before the bus came, he had to play piano. She would make him do extra schoolwork to the point where he actually jumped 2 grades. So he graduated high school at 15.
Yeah.
A lot of articles described him as a Renaissance man. And I had to look that up because I wasn't quite sure what it meant. It was just basically that it was a man of many talents is what it was referring to. He was fluent in French, Spanish, and he was almost fluent in Latin too. He was a very talented painter and pianist. I mean, she did well.
Educating
Yeah,
him.
I mean, he was, again, very, very smart. Too smart, I think, for so good at point.
Yes, yes. He was said to be gifted specifically in science and athletics, and was a very smart prankster.
Oh, to
Um,
a fault, I think.
yes,
Like,
yes.
oof,
He was also a good thief.
we'll get
Often,
in that.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
He often stole tests and made copies and gave it to his friends. When he got his first gun, he began shooting small animals, which don't think, oh my gosh, he's abusing, like he's
oh,
torturing animals. So we'll
yeah,
get into that in a
we'll
little
get
bit.
into it, yeah.
But I just want to stress when I was typing these notes, that's not unusual behavior in the time frame that he was growing up to go out and shoot small animals with a gun. I'm sorry. You can carry on about animal rights. I believe in hunting, but I believe in being a good hunter. This is not being a good hunter. If my kids or grandkids did this, I probably would beat them.
Mhm.
Literally. Not
Yeah.
literally, but
I know
they're
what you mean.
taught. They are taught you don't do that.
Oh,
You
yeah,
do
well,
not
they're
do
in
that.
Boy Scouts, so they
Yes.
have,
Yes. We have,
more of an
there are rules.
understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. So plus, my dad taught hunter safety.
Oh,
So,
yeah, no.
those are rules. So while I'm not classifying this as the abuse of animals that
Yeah.
everybody thinks about,
When I wrote
um,
my paper, I did not qualify him as in the McDonald triad.
all right, we're going to talk about it
Yeah,
because we're coming up. So,
I didn't classify that as.
so the triad is bedwetting, fire starting, and abusing animals.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you more and more. I think it's a bogus thing. I don't think it's really a good. I'm going to tell you, first of all, I'm hot for holes, Paul Holes.
Oh, I love him.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's
Gone in the
hashtag
dark. Oof,
hot for holes, buried bones. His voice,
Hot
and
for
he's not
holes.
a bad looking man. So I'm just going to throw that out
He's
there.
also very intelligent as
He's
well.
very smart. I have a thing for intelligence. I really do. But I'm married. He is also married. It's just a fantasy. God, I hope Bernie does not listen. Obviously, if somebody abuses small animals, like Paul Hole says, and I don't mean to be like, well, Paul Hole said, but he's very intelligent, forensic investigator and everything. He knows what he's talking about. In case you don't know, he was part of the team that caught the Golden State Killer. So, just so you know. But abuse of animals, torture and abuse of animals, not a stretch that somebody's going to jump from that to a human. If you're going to abuse an animal like that, it's not a stretch that you would then turn around and eventually grow up and do that to a human. The bedwetting, I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest here. I wet the bed when I was a kid.
Oh, I did
It
too.
had zero to do with being a serial killer. I am not yet a serial killer. I don't know
Do
that
you-
I ever will be.
But do you think it's like from the psychology aspect of it? Like,
I mean, I'm not saying they can't be bedwetters,
Yeah.
but saying somebody is
oh,
a bedwetter,
no, I understand what you're
you
saying.
know,
But-
I think they're putting too much strength on that one. So
but
that
it needs
one I
to be
kind of,
background to it, because like
I
a lot of
guess.
serial killers that we like in this class we talked about, like people presented, they had molestation involved or physical abuse, and that's what led to the bedwetting. So I
Right.
don't know if it's like
But not everybody who's molested and has that
Correct.
is a serial killer.
exactly.
So
No, but
that's-
I don't know if they're like tying it in to have like I don't know.
Yeah,
But we had this again. This class was very informational and very interesting. It was just something that we had to like look into to see if because there was a lot of killers that
a lot
didn't
of
have
them don't.
anything.
Yeah, they don't fit into it at all.
This was him. I mean, Charles Albright
Yeah.
didn't fit into this.
No, he did not. Does not. And the other one is fire starting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that is a crime. So again, that's one that when I don't want to Paul Holes.
But he's a good source.
He's a good source, and I listen to a podcast that he's in, and he gives his input in that
Such a
with
good
that trial. Yeah, he said that one is also so the torture of animals and the fire starting are the two bigger things. The
Oh.
bedwetting is not, but you don't have to have those to be a serial killer.
No.
Not all serial killers have those. So I just want everybody to understand it's not the be all end all, well, he didn't do those, it can't be him. That's not how it works.
Well, yeah, and I went to a psychologist talk on serial killers about a year ago, and I can't remember her full name, but her first name's Rachel, and she talked about this, and she was one to say there's bearings on this, it's flexible.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean
It
anything.
might indicate it, but if they don't, that's the problem. If they don't have it, it doesn't indicate that they're not.
And this, I think you said it's probably just a dated theory. Back in
Yeah.
the day, you could clump more of these people in this triangle. That's how it's depicted.
I honestly think that serial killers have evolved, and that sounds.
Well, they have to.
But
Oh,
but
I
I mean,
know,
back then, more of them probably fit the triad,
Agreed. Yeah,
and
I agree.
now it's like there's been evolution in their brain and thinking, and I think some of it is all the information that's available
Oh, look
to
how
them.
readily you can find all of this.
Yes, and I think that they're that's part of it, the evolution of it, which is terrifying. Anyway, let's get back.
Terrifying.
Let's get back to Charles Albright, and so the shooting the animals is not part of the triad. That's not the same thing. But he's shooting animals, and he's like, "Hey, I have an interest in becoming a taxidermist." Taxidermy, just for all of you who may not know, I don't know how you wouldn't know, but if you don't know, taxidermy is where, if somebody shoots a deer and it's a prize trophy buck and you want to preserve the deer head, that's taxidermy, where you take the skin and everything and you're preserving that on a form. People get all kinds of stuff taxidermied, small animals.
Fortunately, I have 2 deer heads in my living room that my future husband shot and killed, and I don't like looking at them every day, but they're there.
Oh, my dad had one, and we used to dress it up for Christmas. It had Santa hats and stuff. So he decides he wants to become a taxidermist, and dear old mom is like, "Woohoo! We're gonna learn something new."
Oh,
So,
you would think Fred would be the one that's like,
yeah.
let's bond. Nope. Dell's like, I'm gonna show you how to scoop the eyeballs out.
Yeah.
I found a quote that when we get there, she
Yeah,
was way into this.
She actually had a mail order taxidermy class, and she helped Fred with this. She helped. I mean, Fred. Yeah, it was Fred's a dad. She helped Charles with this. She helped him skin and stuff the animals that he shot, or they would take roadkill animals and do those. The one big thing that is important is that they did not have the money to be able to afford the eyes.
Well, I think they could.
But I think she was like, I'm not spending the money on the expensive eyeballs that look like eyeballs, but you can take these buttons
or black marbles
and you can use those as the eyes. So he would have these very nicely taxidermied animals with either buttons sewn over their eyes or black marbles.
Soulless eyes.
Yeah, or black soulless eyes. Think black-eyed kids, but animals.
I want to jump in real quick because this is something fascinating. So, like you said, there was the Northwestern School of Taxidermy. So there was a man there, Elwood, who did this whole program. He's prestigious. You can, if you Google Northwestern School of Taxidermy, you can actually find all of the articles and download them because all of his methods to everything are still
used.
Yep. And I actually, when I did this as a PowerPoint, I linked it for my professor to look at, and I put a picture in of novelty taxidermy and how he would do these elaborate rabbit displays. But it is still to this day how you do taxidermy. That's how he learned. It's wild.
It's crazy.
It is wild.
Crazy.
So, quote, I have to quote this because this
mentioned.
Again, my mom would never do this with me. My dad would be the one if I wanted to do this.
My dad would be the one, but he didn't taxidermy his deer head.
No, my dad
sent it off.
So his mom, Dell, taught him how to use the knife to cut the skull, the little spoon to scoop out the brains, the scalpel to cut away the eyes from the sockets, and the forceps to pull out the eyes. She was like, hands on, let's do this. Like, I don't know.
I mean,
I
I couldn't do that, but I can see if she was a school teacher and she obviously was big about education
true.
because he skipped 2 grades and I mean he was very smart, but
Yeah.
she pushed him
Oh, big
like
time.
education was a big deal. So in that aspect, I can like almost justify that. Yes, she was big. You're interested in this. We need to get you a hobby.
Yeah, I
Like
just at age
part of me
11, like,
wonders. Part of me wonders though, did she already see something where it was like, let's get you into
oh,
a hobby,
she saw like a sign of it and she's like,
or like at
redirect.
least that he was kind of too smart for his own good and not focused on something. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm
No,
speculating.
I agree with you. Because, like, at age 11, like, I can't picture Xavier doing that. Like,
No,
I just can't imagine. He's 11. Like,
no.
and this is very graphic
It's
and just,
yeah, it's
I don't
disgusting.
know. Like, was it Jameson or Xavier that didn't want to eat the chickens? Like,
It
you know
was
what I mean?
Xavier. Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean?
So
Like, I can't
Xavier,
imagine.
we went just to give you a insight in Xavier, who was 11 and a half, I guess, roughly.
Yeah.
He we went to a zoo of sorts, and they had buffalo, bison. Technically, they're bison, but whatever. And you could feed them, and we were on the safari ride and fed the buffalo, and then we're back going through the regular zoo. And my husband says to him, hey, are you gonna get a buffalo burger with me? Because that's what they had in their cafeteria. And Xavier looked at him and he said, Papa, we don't eat buffalo. Those are animals. So 100% could not see Xavier doing this as an
Oh,
11-year-old. So this is a little bit, but he is advanced, but that's only 2 years. So even at 13, I don't know many 13-year-olds who were like,
I mean, to each their own. Like, if there's somebody listening that's like, oh, I taught my kid
yeah,
this at 10, good. But I just,
let me know.
yeah, let's know
Seriously, I'm
because
curious.
I just don't know how 11-year-old would handle this kind of,
Yeah, I
it's
don't.
not torture because
It's not
it's dead.
torture because it's already dead. You're not torturing it.
Mm,
But for me, it just doesn't feel like something a normal kid that age would be interested in doing.
yeah.
If I'm wrong, if somebody's like, hey, no, my kid did, let me know. Let me
Yeah.
know if they did. And then I also want to know if they're an adult now or are they a serial killer? I'm just saying. Um, so anyway, so one of
Yeah.
the things I saw about that whole thing with the eyes is that when they would go to a local taxidermy store,
Yes.
he was fascinated with the bins of the eyeballs,
The
and
birds.
he would like run his hands like and
Hmm.
let them fall through his fingers, and he'd play with these glass eyeballs.
Hmm.
Um,
He wanted to collect them like marbles.
yes, I mean that's these eyeballs are incredibly realistic. We're
They're
not
so
talking about
cool.
marbles. I mean, they are incredibly
Yeah,
realistic.
Google them.
Yeah,
Google
look
what
them
they
up.
look like. They're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
realistic.
So, and he would just play with them and like let them, how you like put your hand in and then you pick your hand
Like
up and they,
sand.
yes, and
Yes.
they run through your fingers. It just gives me it just had shivers,
Yeah.
like. So, moving past the taxidermy, I jumped around, I didn't include everything that he did. I touched
Oh
upon the
yeah.
bad things because there's a lot in his life.
Oh,
Um,
I have, yeah, we can touch more because I have,
yeah. So at age 13, he had his first conviction for aggravated assault, and his mommy stood up for him.
no, that's
So
not the first time or the
this is where
last.
she's like very odd. She's very strict. You would
Hmm.
think a strict mom would be like, "You did what? Your butt is grounded.
Yeah.
Like you're in trouble." No, she stood up for him.
Yep.
Um, at the age of 15, he got crabs. I'm not talking about the steamed crab kinds that you get in Maryland. I'm talking about the kind that you get when you have sex with a sex worker. At 17, that was 15. He was only
Yeah. And
15.
that's when he graduated high school.
Yes, he graduated. I think that's what happened. He graduated,
Hmm.
and for his own personal celebration, he went and got a prostitute or sex worker, and got crabs. So, hey, your first experience with a sex worker, and you get crabs. That's kind of gross. At 17, he was sentenced to prison for theft and receiving stolen goods, and served 6 months of a 2-year sentence.
Real quick, we'll just run through this. So, like, he enrolled in North Texas State College. He was arrested towards the end of his freshman year. So, he was part of a burglary ring. He broke into 3 different stores and stole $100 worth of items, or hundreds of dollars worth of items. He claimed he had nothing to do with it, but what he did, he was smart, quote unquote. He would give the stolen goods to other boys in his dormitory, and they would hide the stuff there. And when they found out it was stolen, they actually went to the police and were like, "We actually are holding this," and turned him in. So Charles served 1 year in prison for that. So he spent his 18th birthday in prison. But the funny thing is that Dell, being, like you said, very strict but just overprotective, she tried to go to the stores and pay them off. They wouldn't take it. When he went to trial, she convinced the judge to be his lawyer. So she represented him in court. And then when he was found guilty, she threw herself at the judge saying that she wanted to serve the time. Not her precious Charles. Like, she was going to serve it. So so all of that happened. He spent a year in prison. She covered everything up. So no one knew anything about it. She gave some excuse that he was off doing something else. So no one knew he was a convicted felon. Like, nobody. So, and he obviously did not finish school at that school.
No,
He
he
was
did
kicked
not.
out.
He was kicked out.
And then
He attended the Arkansas Teachers College.
Yes.
And he was president of the French Club and editor for the yearbook, and was also a member of student council. He tried out for the football team, but the thing about that was he had never actually played before.
Yeah.
And even though he had never played before, he ended up being the star halfback of the football team. When he was at the teachers college, because I have that he was 18 then, but it may have been 19, I don't remember.
Well, it could have been right after he got out.
Right
He's
after
still
he
been
got
18,
out,
yeah.
He had a friend named Andrew who had this very pretty girlfriend, and Andrew and his girlfriend broke up. And after they broke up, Charles went and stole the photos of Andrew's ex-girlfriend. He took all the photos that Andrew had. He took the time to cut the eyes out of the photos.
Probably with an X-Acto knife.
Yes.
I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm laughing because it's crazy.
Yeah. And then he glued them to the ceiling. And when I say he glued them, this is what I mean. He took the eyes that he cut out and he glued the eyes to the ceiling. He also, I think, had the photos that were missing the eyes also displayed places. But
throughout the dormitory.
Throughout the dormitory.
The eyes were, though, in the room.
Yes, the eyes were in the room, glued to the ceiling and in the bathroom. So it kind of made you feel like you were being watched by the girlfriend's eyes wherever you were in the room.
So crazy.
He also glued the eyes onto photos of other women. So he took this girl's eyes, photos of her eyes, and cut them out and put them on the faces of other women. Around that time, he started dating Betty Nestor, who was known to be very prim and proper. So his complete opposite. However, I'm going to guess a lot like his mom.
Oh, I would assume so. She was an English major. She probably had that, aesthetic.
Teacher, very, strict, prim and proper.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Betty worked at the college president's office, and Charles convinced her to steal the keys for the college, and he, of course, used them unethically. On December 27th, 1954, at the age of 20, he married Betty, who was teaching at Kimball High School at the time. Also in 1954, he stole a bunch of equipment from the college, got caught, and was expelled, but not prosecuted. I don't think the college wanted...
I think the school was embarrassed, though. I think they were just they didn't want
anything
charges.
to do with him. He stole keys. He messed around a bunch of stuff, and they were like, no, "We don't need this."
Ouch. Just another way he got off the hook.
Yeah, exactly. So then he couldn't keep a job for more than 3 months, and I kind of think that he was bored. I think he got bored with them.
Yeah.
He at one time made wooden baseball bats. He became a bullfighter. He was an illustrator designer for a company that made airplanes. And he was a beautician and an artist.
Yep.
So a man that he worked with at the beauty shop when he was a beautician asked Charles Albright to paint a portrait of his wife, of the guy's wife. And it was taking a while for Charles to get this painted.
Months.
Yeah, it took a long time. And the guy's like, "Hey, when is this going to be done?" And Charles told him it was almost done, that he had one more thing to take care of.
Can you guys guess what it is?
Yeah, I know. Take a wild guess. So he shows the man the painting that he had so far, and guy said the painting was completely perfect. It was a perfect rendition of his wife, except her eyes were missing. He hadn't finished the eyes.
So creepy.
Yes. So in 1968, at the age of 34, Charles Albright forged paperwork from the Teachers College, changing his grades from A's to B's to A's and B's, and then gave himself a bachelor's and a master's degree that he did not have. He then secured a job as head of the biology department at the high school and coached the football team, and did this all with completely falsified documents. He did not have a teaching degree. He had no degree. He had 0 degrees.
Yeah, and like, so I'm gonna just jump in here. So he did this at, what'd you say, 34?
34.
So one thing I'm going to touch on is that when he was younger, when he was a senior in high school, so what, 14, 15,
Yeah.
he was failing some of his classes, and he was so scared of what his mother was going to do or think, he broke into the school office and changed his grades from A's to B's, so he forged his principal and teacher's signatures. So him doing this at 34, he had already done...
He's already done this.
Yeah, this is nothing to him.
Yeah,
like, he knows how to do it.
He's like, what, was that 20-year veteran
Yeah.
for forging documents?
Oh my God, yeah. And we're not done with the forging. There's more.
I know.
This is
Yeah.
crazy.
So 1970, he gets probation for forging the documents. And then in 1975, he and his wife Betty separate. They do have one child together. He did have a daughter. I don't have any information about her. And even if I did, I wouldn't share it because the girl does not need to be associated with her father.
Nope.
With her bio father, because it's a possibility.
Her mom could have got remarried.
Yeah, I would 100% say
hope
that's
so.
I hope so. I hope they're living a great life. In 1981, his mother dies at the stove while making dinner. I believe he was there and witnessed. Like he was,
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I read that he witnessed that. That year, he also travels to meet his birth mother. Now, you said at that point after the mom dies, his dad kind of gets closer to him.
Yeah, because now Dell's not there to be a barrier for his father. So now him and his father have gotten way closer. And I think his dad encouraged him to seek his birth mother, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, depending on what we... And that's the other thing.
We don't really know. We don't know anything about his birth mother. So there was some speculation that I read that his birth mother was possibly a sex worker. There's no information to back that up, but you had...
Yeah, I was reading I will refer to it again, the See No Evil Texas Monthly article, and I encourage you to read it. There's a lot of good information in it. So it was said that in the beginning of the article, his adopted mom was saying that his biological mom was a law student who got pregnant at 16, and her father told her that she had to give the baby up for adoption, that if she didn't, she would be disowned. And then I found that in the same article, I believe, that when he reconnected, he found out that she was a nurse. I don't know if that's true. There's really not much...
Because they interviewed him, didn't they?
Yeah, the See No Evil article, he's being interviewed.
So the only problem I have with that is he's really not somebody who tells the truth.
Oh, he's a liar. But I would hope that this guy Skip, we're not pronouncing that last name, but he would have some integrity to like look up stuff.
But how can you? Because a lot of those that information is sealed, so how would you be able to find that? And like the one thing I question, how can you be 16 and a law student?
Well, that's what I thought too, which was odd.
Now I get that he was really smart, but he also had his mother pushing him.
Correct.
And so he graduated high school at 15. Even if she was smart enough to graduate high school about the same age, she's not going to be in law school yet.
No.
So that's one thing I question. That information's coming from Charles Albright.
Well, and he's saying it's coming from his mom, who knows?
Yeah,
it's none of
guess what? I could tell you.
Underlying narrators.
Guess what my mom told
I know.
me? My mom told me that I am a princess, that I am a Cherokee princess, and I am worth like $10 million.
No,
I could especially because he's so good at lying and forging.
There was a quote from one of the members of his church saying that, or no, not his church, I'm sorry. It was a parole officer saying after 20 years of him having to deal with Charles, he cannot forget how manipulative and whatever Charles said, Charles believed was true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, And that's somebody that deals with this stuff all the time. And he,
Yeah.
after 20 years, still never forgot who Charles Albright was because he was just so, would you say narcissistic?
I would say narcissistic. I mean, not really having a whole lot to go on. I have a thing about narcissists, by the way. I've mentioned them a couple times in passing where I'm able to be like, I think this is a narcissist. I would say his mother probably helped create a narcissist in this
I
case.
would say so.
Yeah. So, and by narcissist, let me qualify that because long ago somebody brought up, "Hey, you should look up to see if this person is a narcissist." I'm thinking, well, narcissist is just somebody who thinks they're,
They're
great.
full of
They're
themselves.
full of themselves. They have an ego problem.
Yeah.
I'm talking about narcissistic personality disorder. I'm talking about, I was going to date the DSM-4, but now it's the DSM-5, I believe, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual for
Yeah.
mental diseases. I'm talking about narcissistic personality disorder. A lot of murderers are narcissists. There's a lot of podcasts about some of them. I
For
think
sure.
Dear John is a really good one.
That's a
That's a
great
good
one.
one.
Mhm.
Look up that one if you're
That is
interested.
a great one.
Anyway, so to get back to Charles Albright, who
Yeah.
probably is a narcissist, after he travels to meet his birth mother, he around that time he becomes very involved in his local Catholic church. At the church, he befriends a family there, becomes very close with them, and ends up molesting their daughter. Now, there's a discrepancy in age here. I had information that said she was 9. We both also have information that she was 14.
Yep.
I'm going to go with 14. I really think that that's the correct number.
I would assume so because the other you might have this too. March 25th of 1985, he confessed in an open courtroom that he knowingly engaged in sexual intercourse with a 14-year-old.
I think that's her.
and
Yeah.
and the family didn't want her to have to go through, a trial of something like
Yeah.
that. So I would assume 14. He was 51 when he
Yeah.
did this. Um, it just is disgusting.
Yeah.
But this is 4 years after his mom passes away.
Yeah. So he, like Liz said, he pled guilty in court. So the girl did not have to go through the trial. That's probably the only decent thing that he did.
Yeah, but he again, slap on the wrist. He didn't even
But
get it.
he only received probation because the girl's family didn't want her to go through the stress of the trial. So there was a plea deal, and he only got probation for
Yeah.
raping a 14-year-old.
Insane.
Yeah.
Plus all of the other things he has in his past.
Yeah, everything
he
else.
get, like, an actual
when is he going to
sentence?
get in trouble?
Yeah.
Then in 1986, his father dies, and he inherits money from his dad. And at that time, he moves in with a woman named Dixie, who was a widow. So he now has a live-in girlfriend. His divorce is finalized the following year. His divorce from Betty, who he has the child with, that's finalized in 1987. At this point, he is a very popular member of the community. He was described as happy-go-lucky, he had a great sense of humor, and he played softball in a local softball league. His main income came from rental properties that he inherited from his dad, but Dixie, who worked at a gift shop, was the main breadwinner in that she's the one who paid the household bills. He did not, even though he had money.
Can you imagine?
I know. He would visit prostitutes while Dixie was working, and sometimes he would take them to his rental properties.
Yep.
He had regular sex workers that he,
Yeah, he had standing appointments.
yes, standing appointments, and he liked to take charge, and he bought drugs for them, he bought meals for them, and would often tell them, "I'd hate to have anything happen to you." Real stand-up guy, real nice. But then he started becoming a little more sadistic. He would tie them up, he would whip them with rope or extension cords, he'd yell and cuss at them, he became rough during sexual activity. So there was a shift. I don't know why, I'm not sure why, but there was a shift where he became more violent with them.
Yeah, I could not find a breaking point. That was something else that we
That's
had to look
something,
into.
yeah.
The only thing I could think of was his mom passed away 4 years later. He raped that poor girl. And then his dad passed away, and 4 years later, killing started. So I don't know if there was just like a duration, something just snapped in him. It took 4 years to
Yeah.
build up. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So, as I mentioned, he played softball in the local softball league, men's softball league. During one of his softball games, there were two women who drove by just about the time that the game ended. One of the other players jokingly said, "I bet they're prostitutes. Hey, Charlie, why don't you go get a taste of that?" And Charles turned and looked at the guy and said, "I hate prostitutes. If I had my chance, I'd kill them all."
Cool.
It was 1 year after that that the murder started, that the first murder happened. Once the police were on to Albright as a suspect, they did a photo lineup with Brenda White and Veronica Rodriguez, who were the only two people who had the credible story about an older man who, was involved. Brenda immediately identified Charles Albright, and Veronica also identified him, but she was visibly shaken. I mean, think about it. She was in the car. Her friend, Mary Pratt, is shot in the head in front of her. She's next.
Yep.
And she manages to get out of the car and run away, thank God, and hide, or she would have been killed too.
Yeah.
So she's visibly shaken when she sees his photo. She identifies him as well. They search his residence, but they don't really find a whole lot.
So yeah, I have so they raided the rental homes and where he was living. The FBI searched and they only could produce carpenters, woodworking blades, X-Acto blades. He had a Grey's Anatomy book and a dozen true crime books. No eyes.
Yeah, if you were in my, there's like, well, there's not as many true crime books in here. A lot of paranormal books. Most of my true crime stuff is on my Kindle, so you can't see it right away.
Mine's
But
right in the spare room. I have a whole shelf
I know you do.
dedicated.
I have it on my Kindle, so I don't have an anatomy book, but
I do.
you took anatomy class for your major, not just for shits and
Several.
giggles. Liz did not take the serial killer class and the anatomy class because there's something concerning.
It's fine. So let us later.
Anyway, yeah, I also had that they found that the fireplace had a secret cover on it.
Oh no, I didn't know this.
Yeah, top had a secret cover, and when they opened it, there were 7 to 8 guns in there, but none of them were linked to the murder.
What? Okay, so I didn't know that, but I did know that they found weapons, but
Yeah.
nothing
In a
matched.
secret compartment in his
I see.
fireplace. Yeah, like Liz said, they found X-Acto knives and blades. Also, couldn't connect them to the murder, but I mean,
How generic are they? I mean,
they're pretty generic, but how many people have a whole bunch of X-Acto knives and blades? I have one X-Acto knife with one blade, and I don't know, it might be in that container over there, but I'm not really sure because I think I've used it like 3 times.
I have one as
Um,
well for scrapbooking.
Well, that's why I have it. I have it for
you're right, I don't
crafting.
have it for like any
Yeah,
other
how many
reason.
other people have it? Box cutter, yes.
Oh,
I
shit.
have like 4 box cutters around here.
Yeah, we do.
Because we lose them and buy new ones, and then I find the ones we lost. So those are around, but
Yeah.
X-Acto knives,
No, that's true. I didn't think of it that way.
you've got to think about that. I mean, most people are like, "Oh, whoop-de-doo, X-Acto knives," but
How
really,
many do you need?
how many of you have a collection of X-Acto knives around your house? Do not tell me. I don't want to have to testify against you
Yeah, keep
in
it
a
to
future
yourselves.
trial. Like Liz said, no eyeballs. During the search, there was a forensic scientist named Dr. Irving Stone, and when he went in the house, he saw this baseball cap laying on the floor, and he realized they were searching the home of one of his softball teammates. He actually apparently turned to one of the officers and was like, whose house is this? Who was the suspect? And they were like, Charles Albright. And he realizes, shit, I play softball with him.
I know him.
Dr. Stone does eventually come face to face with Albright in the police station. So they
Yes.
pass each other. Albright asked him for a hug, and
That's weird.
Dr. Stone just ignored him and kept walking. I mean,
Why?
like, that's such a narcissistic thing to do. Hey, buddy, give me a hug.
Yeah.
Like, dude, he just searched your house looking for eyeballs.
Dead. Like I don't
Like, people are dead, and you're like, hey, buddy, give me let's slap our butts, whatever.
God.
So they searched a barn as well. So he must have owned a barn on one of the properties. And in the barn, they found specimens like snakes and pig eyeballs in jars. But no human eyeballs were found.
I really want to know.
They were never found.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. Yeah, that's something. Just spoiler alert. They don't find any of the eyeballs. I would love to know what he did with them.
Yeah.
I have that they found 20 to 30 murder books.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that the walls were decorated with those ceramic masks.
Ew.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? Where you can paint them up like Harlequin figures.
Hmm.
Those masks don't have eyes.
Yeah.
They've got eye holes because
Hmm.
it's a mask and you put it on and your eyes look through it. Now, he lived with a woman who could have liked these sort
Oh,
of things
sure.
and collected them. It could have just been
She
a
worked at a gift
total,
shop, so like
yeah, it
who
could have
knows
been a
what kind of
complete
knickknack.
coincidence,
Yeah.
but I could see him agreeing to, like, okay, well, yes, oh no, let's put the eyeless things up on the wall. That's awesome. Then we're going to jump back to Shirley Williams. So Shirley Williams was victim number 3. She was the one who was beaten, and the eyes were removed, but it was very sloppy. Just to touch base again, and the one found by the school. So she was dumped more publicly and shot in a shocking manner. I believe a mom walking to the school with her children
Yep.
is who discovered the body.
So many little kids saw her.
Yeah. Yeah. So after they found the site of Shirley Williams' actual murder, they actually found the yellow raincoat. On the raincoat, they found some unusual hairs. They also found the same hairs in the vacuum cleaner. Now you said I didn't have this information, but you said something about the blanket that she's got a whole list of evidence.
So, oh, here's one. Forensic lab found hairs on the sex workers that were like hairs taken from Albright's head and pubic area. And also, lab techs found hairs on a blanket that was in the back of Albright's truck, like those found on Mary and Susan. Hairs found in Albright's vacuum cleaner had hair that matched Shirley's. And also in the field that they found Shirley's raincoat, and they also found another blanket that matched Albright's hair as well. And this, I have to point out, this was the first time in history that the DA's office pursued evidence solely based on hair fibers, which is
They don't really do that a whole lot
no,
anymore.
they don't.
But I will say that found his hair on them, but the other hairs that they mentioned in the vacuum cleaner and on Shirley, they were actually identified by a college. They were sent to a college. It was animal hair. It was squirrel hair that also matched a taxidermied squirrel that he had done relatively recently. So it matched the squirrel hair, matched the vacuum cleaner hair, the hair on Shirley's raincoat, or the raincoat she borrowed,
Yeah.
and the taxidermied squirrel in his house. So he went to trial. But he only went to trial for Shirley Williams' murder, which was the third murder. He was never tried for the other 2 murders. He did receive life in prison for Shirley Williams' murder. He is the presumed killer for the other 2, Mary Pratt and Susan Peterson. There are some people who believe that he is innocent and did not commit any of the crimes.
And Albright himself maintains that he's innocent.
Well, he's dead now, so.
Well, no, but like during
his.
Yep, and in any other stuff, he never has admitted to anything.
Yes. During the whole investigation, there's mention that they found the murder of another sex worker named Rhonda K. Bowie in October of 1988, which predates the 3, so she would have been the first. She was found stabbed more than 20 times, and they have her listed. They believe she was his first victim. I could not find any information about why specifically they consider her his first victim.
And I never saw anything about her when I was doing all my research. So we talked about this at dinner. I think such a violent area, and there's no MO, like nothing indicating that he did it. I just think maybe it's an unfortunate murder.
The only thing I can say is maybe she was one of his regulars.
Oh,
maybe
sure.
they knew each other. Maybe there's somebody who said she went off with him, like like that's what I'm wondering. It didn't mention it. It was legitimate enough information for me to say, they're saying this, but I could find nothing to say this is why we think that.
Sure.
And at this point, he's already been given life in prison
without parole.
Without
so
parole, so that as far as they're concerned, it doesn't matter. So I don't know if he really did that, or if they were just like, let's throw this one in there and can call it closed.
Well, I have a timeline pertaining to, because in the beginning of this, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier, I didn't know if he did it or not. I was kind of like, maybe there's a lot of coincidental things happening here. But what really really put this together for me was so Dixie, like you said, was the breadwinner of the family. So
His living girlfriend.
yes, his
Just to
living girl.
reiterate.
Yes. So she was the one making the money, even though Charles had money. So he decided to make extra money. He was going to take up a job delivering newspapers in the middle of the night. So this is what kind of got me thinking. So he'd wake up at 3 a.m., deliver papers from 4 to 6 a.m., and be home by 6:15. So he started that on October 1st of 1990. A couple months later, Mary Pratt's body's found December 13th of 1990. I think he was using this as a way to kind of have an alibi. Dixie's like, oh, my partner's delivering newspapers, nothing odd there. That was like, and then also we talked about how he had these really strong connections with everybody. Like, you know, I know we talked about this, but I want to go into more detail because this is what was mind blowing.
You and I talked about it
Yes,
at dinner.
yeah.
We didn't talk about it on the podcast.
I feel like we have. But no, so Albright had a really strong connection to these women. I mean, not so much Shirley, though. I have to point that out, which was the third victim. So he knew Susan Peterson. He was considered one of her sugar daddies. So Susan was the second victim. Also, on some of her forms that she filled out for different jobs or loans and things, she would put him down as a contact and mark him as her best friend.
And this, just so everybody remembers, she was the one who was the ex-military. She
Yep.
was a Navy veteran, and everybody said she would not have.
Exactly.
The person who did that to her had to have had some interaction with
Yeah.
her. She had to know the
Trust
person,
them.
trust them.
And like so with Peterson too, she must have had to been bailed out. So on her at a local bail bond office, Peterson had Albright as a cosigner on bond applications. You don't just do that willy-nilly for
No.
like somebody. And then there was also Mary Pratt, who was our first victim. There's evidence that Charles was friends with Mary Pratt long before she was a sex worker. I read somewhere that Charles was actually dating one of Mary's friends. So that's how they met. And he was also known because, I don't know if this is common knowledge. So, a red light district is an area where prostitutes, sex workers hang out, sex acts are happening.
Roxanne,
Yes.
you don't have to put on the red light. Roxanne. Sorry.
So yeah,
But that's what that song is about. In case you don't know, if you've ever heard it, the song Roxanne is about a prostitute.
Yep.
The red light, they put red lights on. So if you're driving around an area, that's why they call it the red light district.
Yes.
They had red lights that indicated they were sex workers. You could go to them for sex, to
Yep.
pay for sex.
So Albright was known in the red light district as Old Man Albright. So
oh my God.
I mean, I just, but yeah, so and again, the paper route, I really think that has something to do with it too, because it gives him the
It
way
gives
of,
them a way to do it
And have an alibi.
and to have an alibi at the same time.
I mean, and these women trusted him. Again, I think you're onto something with the whole thing about poor Shirley.
I
I don't think
100%.
I don't think she was, because they had found nothing like connection wise linking her to her. It would make sense that Tina would be, who
She
he was
was the
gunning
real
for.
target, and he
Yeah.
was just like, she's wearing a yellow raincoat. So
Mhm.
when he came back around to grab her, Tina's inside, but Shirley's wearing the raincoat. It's dark and raining,
Yep.
and he grabbed the wrong person, and it really ticked him off, and he took it out on her because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Some of the information I got was from Radford University. Their psychology department has a thing where they kind of go through serial killer profiles and list timelines and everything in the background and the childhood abuses they may have endured and all this stuff. They don't think he did it. So I wasn't, I was kind of like, did he do it? Maybe he didn't do it. Apparently Dixie, his live-in girlfriend, common law wife, whatever you want to call her, she kind of gave him an alibi or said, during some of the time frames, not all of them, but she did claim that. But if he's working a paper route during the times,
Yeah.
how is she able to alibi? He's not home with her because he's on his paper route. So again, that also gives me the idea that this gives him the ability to do
Yeah.
what he wants because nobody's watching you on your paper route.
No.
There's no such thing as GPS to track where you've been. You don't have a cell phone to,
Yeah.
back then I think there were cell phones, but they were like bricks.
Oh yeah, and there
We
was
used
no
to,
such thing as like cell phone pings and stuff
no,
like
no, you
that.
didn't
Like,
have anything like that. I also think, and I watch a lot of true crime, so I love the Oxygen Channel's Cold Justice. One of the things,
oh,
Kelly Sigler, who is the prosecutor on that show, she actually is a prosecutor in Texas, or was. I think she's
okay.
retired and she does this stuff. Kelly Sigler would tell these people when she was helping to look into these cases, she says, you, some people think that circumstantial
Mhm.
case is not strong. And she does this demonstration with pencils, and she'll pick up one pencil. You have one pencil, you have a circumstance, it's easy to break. You
Yeah,
snap it in half, you can throw it out.
I
But when
already.
you have like 10 different circumstances and she will grab like a handful of 10 pencils, you cannot break
Mhm.
10 pencils together in a group.
That's.
And she says that is what makes a strong circumstantial case.
Mhm.
So you have somebody who had a very overbearing mother. She's overprotective, she's doting. She has kept the father at arm's length. He's not allowed to be close.
I have one thing to add real quick.
Uh-huh.
I forgot. This was like one of the craziest things. So speaking of Dell being overbearing, so I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh because this is insane. So Carl started to develop headaches, and he believed that it was from Dell nagging him. So instead of her realizing that she was stressing him out, she um, she made him wear glasses because she thought it was his eyesight that was going bad. He had 20/20 vision, and she forced him to wear glasses because
So then he really did have a headache.
exactly. That's again
Yeah, that's how crazy,
overbearing.
that's how overbearing she was. You have this overbearing mom.
Mm,
She's really skirting the edge of abuse.
really.
Like it was really, really close. So I think it kind of went over into abuse 100%. So then the overbearing mom helps him develop. I mean, he gets this interest in taxidermy.
Mhm.
What does overbearing mom do? Well, I'm going to sit here and teach it with you.
Yep.
And I'm going to show you how to scoop out the eyeballs.
Mm,
But guess what? Even though I probably could pay for these eyeballs,
mhm.
you're not going to get the eyeballs. You can use these cheap black marbles or buttons.
Yeah.
I saw the buttons were used more
Yeah.
often. So
Yes.
you have this very nice taxidermied animal and these crap eyeballs. Um, we're going to drive that home to you. He's highly intelligent,
Mhm.
problem after problem. And we have the whole prank thing with his buddy and cutting the eyeballs out of the photos of the ex-girlfriend and
Weird.
gluing them on the ceilings and the walls of the bathroom, gluing them on pictures of other girls. We have the painting of the artist where he's got this painting for months, and when he shows the guy, he's like, "It's almost done. I just have one thing I'm trying to get right." And it's a beautiful portrait of this guy's wife. It's like perfect. It looks just like her, except it doesn't have any freaking eyes. I'm sorry, but I'm not really sure how you can say this guy isn't the guy.
Yeah, he had the
Um,
knowledge on how to remove the
yeah,
eyeballs. I
yeah,
mean, and that's like the biggest thing to me is like he knew how to do it. He knew all of the victims, even though he messed up on Shirley, I believe, but he knew everybody.
yeah,
I think there's too much circumstantial,
yep,
but I agree. Like you need to have enough where it's a solid case. You can't just have a couple things and be like, oh, I'll throw it out the wall
yeah,
and hope it sticks. I don't know. I just really think that this was.
yeah. If I remember correctly, I'm going to see if I can pull it up here real quick. The Radford uh, University, I do have it here. Yeah, it's Radford University study said, I was looking to see if it was here real quick.
So while you're looking at that, so this is another thing to go with the eyeballs. He again maintains his innocence the whole time during his trial and while was serving out his sentence. He actually enjoyed prison life. So he wanted to write a book on Civil War generals' wives. He also was a carpenter in a prison workshop. He coached the prison softball team. He had a girlfriend that he wrote letters to the whole time. Even with him being locked up, he still managed to continue his eyeball obsession. He would request magazines that showcased eyeballs, wanting to paint them. So that was his way of being able to still continue the obsession. He would be like, "Oh, I need this Time magazine from this year." And the guy that wrote this See No Evil article, he actually looked up some of the magazines that Charles was wanting, and yeah, they had they had eyeballs, massive ones, these magazines.
Well, one of the other things I was looking for with this Radford University study, I can't quite find it on the thing, but one of the reasons why they said that they kind of leaned towards him not being the killer was the fact that there were like a couple of prostitutes killed after his conviction, but they didn't have their eyeballs removed.
No, and again, it's a bad area.
I know there were 500 murders
Yeah,
they were dealing with,
did
and you're going to just say, well, two more prostitutes were killed. Well, no, duh.
it's
I
a
mean, it's a violent, I mean,
mhm.
it's a profession, but it's a violent one. It's carried out in very not great areas of cities, and Dallas was not a great city at the time. They also mention, as far as they go through different things about, they talk about the triad. They say no to each point of the triad, like we mentioned,
Mhm.
but they talk about after death behavior, and they want to know if they ate part of the victim. Well, one thing they bring up is unless he ate the eyeballs.
Oh, oh God.
No, but that, like I can't imagine that's what he did, but I just want to
No.
throw that out there that
Yeah.
that was a possibility. But I disagree with them trying to say that no, he wasn't. I think they got the right person. There were no more eyeless victims in Dallas after he was gone.
You know, we probably want to wrap this up, but like we were talking about at dinner, like them finding fibers and things. And there was the famous case of the Atlanta child murderer. And I just looked his name up because I knew I was gonna forget it. Wayne Williams.
Yeah.
So this it's a controversial thing, but they got this man on carpet fibers out of his van. He's known as the Atlanta child murderer, yet he is not he's in jail for not killing children. I think he was convicted for two murders. But the reason why I bring this up is children kept dying after he was
Yeah.
put in prison. So just because, like, again, in Atlanta at this time period, it was very dangerous.
Yeah.
I just, for them to be like, oh, it's not him, there's still murder. I don't know. It's just baffling to me. Like, but I think, Wayne Williams, I mean, he's a really great example of children kept getting killed after he was
After it was
put in
done, yeah.
prison, but he would, I think that was more of a political move
I think
to get
so
it to
too.
be quiet. But
Yeah.
we don't have to get into that. But
That's a whole other
yeah,
episode.
yeah, no, it's just wild.
Yes. So anyway, I think Charles Albright definitely is the killer, even though he wasn't convicted for all three. He was just convicted for the one.
Mhm.
He had too many connections with these women. He was the best friend of the second one killed.
Yeah.
Her sugar daddy was on her bail documents, listed as her best friend in loan documents.
Yeah.
100%. And she was known to be somebody, she's not going with you if she didn't trust you. 100%. Without a doubt, I think he did it. I think you agree.
I do too.
Yeah. So anyway, that I think is going to do it for this episode. It is a much longer episode than normal.
Yeah.
Like always, you can find episodes of Lurk wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple, what else are we on? YouTube. We're on YouTube and iHeartRadio. So basically, wherever you find, I think we're on Audible too, Amazon.
Oh,
So wherever you find the
I
podcast,
don't
you
use
can
that
find
song.
us.
I'm like, oh, really?
So you can find us on those. You can, of course, find episodes on the website, lurkpodcast.com. And if you haven't noticed yet, definitely visit the website because we have overhauled it. There is a new blog that I'm trying to keep updated.
A newsletter.
There is a newsletter. The first one went out mid-February. That's the time frame, mid-month. So you can go on the website and bottom left-hand corner, I believe, is the area to subscribe, to put in your email address. So if you're looking for behind-the-scenes information, maybe some podcast or TV show suggestions, whatever I feel like I want to tell you that particular month, sign up for that. It's free. I will send that out to you. And until next time, keep lurking.